From one action-packed epic to the next, today's artist has infused some of the most powerful sounds into our ears and is considered one of the most successful composers in Hollywood in the 21st century. Yes, we are in Season 3 of Oscar Rewind, and today I am looking at Sony Pictures and Marvel Studios' Venom. Written by the team of Jeff Pinker, Scott Rosenberg, and Kelly Marcel, based on a story idea by Pinker and Rosenberg, and the comic character created by Todd McFarlane and David Michelinie, and directed by Ruben Fleischer, the film released in October of 2018. What's up, everybody? Cinephile Mike here, and it is a new episode of Oscar Rewind, where I look back at the films of this past year's Oscar nominees and winners. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of these throwbacks, and today we are in Chapter 5 of our journey, The Sound of Oscar. This chapter is going to focus on the music that has taken us to emotional places through score, through song, as well as provided us the sound effects that give us these varied worlds to live in. And we're going to kick it off with the man who took home his third Oscar in less than 10 years for Best Original Score, Ludwig Göransson. He won for Sinners. This was an earlier piece. If you've never seen Venom, here's your quick spoiler-free setup. Investigative reporter Eddie Brock, played by Tom Hardy, has a good life. He has his own TV show, a reputation for being one of, if not the best, investigative reporters. And he's preparing to marry the love of his life, Anne, played by Michelle Williams, an attorney. One day, he's sent to interview Carlton Drake, played by Riz Ahmed, a scientist with a reputation for not having everything being above board. Gleaning a confidential report, Eddie confronts him about his fraudulent practices, and it results in Eddie's life falling apart. He loses his job, Anne loses her job, and he loses Anne. Of the work being kept secret, Drake had sent a space probe looking for new inhabitable worlds and ends up bringing back 4 alien symbiotes that attached to the probe. However, upon return, one went missing, leaving him with 3. As he tests with them, the human subjects he's bonding them with die off, causing his colleague, Dr. Skirth, played by Jenny Slate, to seek out Eddie, the man who can expose this, and sneaks him into the lab to get the evidence he needs. However, once there, one of the symbiotes, named Venom, attaches himself to Eddie and explains that his kind have come to Earth as a new place to live, hopefully by possessing and devouring the other life forms. Determining that Earth might actually be worthwhile, Venom attempts to live a symbiotic life with Eddie until that mysterious 4th symbiote named Riot reappears, and it will lead to a battle to save Earth. This is an interesting take on the classic Marvel villain that we know, turning him into an anti-hero who's hell-bent on saving Earth, provided he gets to eat a few heads along the way. And where this film actually works is that I don't think it ever set out to really necessarily be like the next big epic superhero movie along the lines of like a bigger mainstream MCU film. Or maybe it did and they didn't succeed. But this was like a fun one-off character piece, although it did go off to spawn 2 sequels, neither of which was as good as this one. But look, Tom Hardy, he's absolutely delightful as Eddie Brock and Venom. He gives a fun performance playing, against the variation of himself. He plays the 2. He creates an Eddie that's different from what we know in the comics and the original cartoon. He's just an everyman trying to make it by, not really picking on anyone. And Michelle Williams, always a delight. She has some fun opportunities to play by Hardy's side. And in a refreshing break from the trope, she's never once really the damsel in distress. In fact, this film smartly juxtaposes the traditional female sidekick here, showing us someone who's not afraid to fight dirty. And in the role of the villain, Riz Ahmed, he is a delight, chewing enough scenery to not quite go overboard, but prove that even in his smaller stature when compared to Hardy, he effectively goes toe-to-toe with him. Visually, I actually think the CGI they used to create Venom is excellent, really creating the living version of what we know from the comics. And additionally, when we get to, there's going to be a climactic fight here, mini spoiler, I have to say, the visuals are so sharp that you can actually tell the difference between the 2 characters, which is interesting given the way the fight goes, which is very different sometimes when CGI makes it difficult to tell who's doing what at times. I can't say that the script itself is solid. A lot of this survives on the idea that random happenstances allow certain events to occur, but I do appreciate that unlike other common origin stories we could have had, we don't have to get a lot of backstory. This writing team trusted the fans and the people going to the film that they knew where these symbiotes came from and just gave enough of the piece of information we needed to know in order to drive the story without having to take us to space and do the whole nine and not have Venom give us a big data dump. I'm thankful we don't have that. As for why we're here, the score, composed by Göransson, this was his second of 2 comic book films in 2018, with the earlier one, Black Panther, which I just talked about the other day, giving him his first Oscar. He won the Oscar for Black Panther. No stranger to action films, he created epic moments with his score in Venom that appeased the comic fans and also knew when to have some lighter fun playing with the more tender moments in between. And in Venom, he blends different sounds, electronic and heavy metal, juxtaposed with more traditional orchestra at times, so you really get that duality of Venom and Brock quite well. Now, let's talk about the box office and the awards. In total, Venom currently sits with $213,515,506 domestically and $642,569,655 internationally, for a worldwide take of $856,085,161. Critically, this film was sharply divided, earning a 31% on the tomato meter from 365 reviews and an 80% popcorn meter from over 25,000 reviews. I mean, clearly the audience loved it. Award season-wise, with less than a dozen nods and wins, some of which were for positive recognition and some not so. Some of the more positive highlights do include a nod for outstanding effects simulations in a photoreal feature by the Visual Effects Society, and Tom Hardy was nominated for Best Visual Effects or Animated Performance by the LA Online Film Critics Society. The film also won the Golden Angel Award at the Chinese American Film Festival for the most popular U.S. film in China in 2018. Look, for me, Venom is fun. Man, it's not a frequent rewatch, but I've watched it a few times. There's something there. It's a solid, middle-of-the-road, 3-star film. And while, yes, we have kicked off some of the chapters with, 5-star, higher-scoring films, I felt this one was perfect, kind of, ending the weekend. We just had Spider-Man Day and Spider-Man Brand New Days out there. I know that kind of dates this review, but there you have it. If you would like to watch or rewatch Venom, you can find it currently streaming on Disney+. And that's it for episode 37 of season 3 of Oscar Rewind and the start of chapter 5. If you enjoyed this episode and want to check out the others, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments, what's your favorite Spider-Verse film? Please follow me on all social media platforms and check out my website, Cinephile Mike, for more exclusive cinematic content, filmmaker interviews, and great stuff. I will see you all for the next Rewind, but until then, this is Cinephile Mike saying take a break and watch something new.